What if part of you actually doesn't want to get out of debt? I know that sounds insane. You're probably thinking, of course, I want to get out of debt. Why in the world would I not want to get out of debt? But I want to invite you to consider that maybe your debt is doing something for you. Maybe it's protecting you from something. Because traditionally, if we're struggling with debt, we think the problem is that we need a better budget. We need to stop spending. We need to make more money. And it's not that those things don't matter, but sometimes the debt itself is not the real problem. Sometimes debt is a solution to the problem you haven't realized that you have, because debt can give you an identity. It can give you an excuse. It can keep you connected to your family, connected to your people. It can keep you from having to find out who you might become if you had more money. And your nervous system can actually become more comfortable with the debt than with the freedom that you say that you want. So today, we're going to explore the 9 hidden payoffs of staying in debt. And I want to be really clear. This is not about blame or shame. This is a zero judgment, zero shame space. We are just gathering information so that we can see the bigger picture. I'm not saying that you're consciously choosing your debt. I'm saying that there may be some part of you that knows that your debt is serving a purpose. And the great thing is, if you uncover what that purpose is, you can start changing the pattern at a much deeper level. Because the question isn't only, how can I get out of debt? The question is, who do I have to become in order to enjoy and sustain a debt-free life? That, my friend, is the much more interesting question. All right, let's dive into the 9 hidden payoffs of staying in debt. Number 1, debt is familiar, and your body can get hooked on the state. This is one of the biggest hidden payoffs. Debt is familiar, even when you hate it, even when you're anxious about it, even when you swear, I am never getting into debt again. This is it. Your body knows this territory. You know what it's like to have a credit card payment. You know what it's like to check your bank account and feel that little jolt. You know what it's like to worry about money, to always have something to fix. You understand this life. You know it, this constant state of financial stress. And when you've lived in financial stress for so long, the stress itself can become familiar. Your body gets used to this state of hypervigilance, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the tension, the urgency, this feeling of, I need to figure this out. It becomes your default way of being in the world. And I'm not saying you're sitting around thinking, I love being stressed. Of course you're not. But your body can become accustomed to a particular emotional and physiological state. Here's what that looks like. You start paying off your debt. You get some money in the bank, you start doing things differently, taking consistent positive money actions, making some progress, and suddenly you feel weird. You stop feeling the anxiety of that looming late payment fee. The drama of just having enough starts to wane. And the problems that took up all of your mental space start to vanish. On the surface, that feels like it should be a good thing, but your nervous system doesn't necessarily interpret that as, yay, we're safe, we're doing so good, look at us go. Instead, it clocks this and thinks something's different. And different is almost always interpreted as a threat to your central nervous system. It can feel unsafe to feel calm when you've lived in a pattern of financial chaos for a really long time. So what happens? You reach for something that brings you back to the drama, the anxiety, the fear, the familiar. You grab the credit card, you make a purchase, maybe you say, fuck it, I deserve this. And then, the relief. You get that familiar hit of excitement. You get to stop feeling the unfamiliar, calm, and relaxed feeling, and you've just returned to something your body recognizes. That's where this can almost start to look like an addictive cycle. Now, I'm not saying everyone with debt is addicted to spending, but we absolutely can develop compulsive loops around money and emotions. You feel something uncomfortable, peace, you reach for the behavior, spending, and the behavior changes your emotional state. That familiar hit of excitement and adrenaline. You get temporary relief, and your brain learns that worked. So the next time that feeling comes up, when you start to feel more calm and relaxed around your finances, you reach again. That's why you might start and stop in your debt repayment journey. Pay it off, recreate it, you get the adrenaline rush, that temporary hit, then you pay it off again, recreate it again, and so on and so on. It goes on and on and on. And that's why it's not actually about the thing you're buying. You don't necessarily need those shoes or the thing you just one clicked on or the dinner or whatever the thing happens to be. You need the feeling that the thing, the purchase just gave you. When you're starting to become debt-free, you're not just changing your bottom line, you're changing your identity. You're becoming someone who has money left over, who has more than enough, who can sit with money and not immediately spend it as soon as it comes in. Someone who doesn't always have a balance hanging over their head, who doesn't feel the need to create financial chaos to create a sense of urgency. You're not stuck in debt because you secretly don't want financial freedom, but because the old identity is familiar. And sometimes familiar feels safer than free. This brings me to the second hidden payoff of staying in debt. Debt can give you an identity. And one of the biggest identities I see around money is the struggle identity. Maybe you grew up hearing things like, you have to work really hard for the money. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work your ass off. Life isn't supposed to be easy. Rich people are lucky. People like us don't make money. And so struggle becomes wired into your entire identity. I'm a hard worker. I'm responsible. I sacrifice. I grind. I do what needs to be done. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a hardworking person, but if you've equated how hard you struggle with how much you're worth, if part of you believes that if you're not struggling, you're not doing enough, or you're lazy, or you're spoiled, or you're not like your family anymore, debt can actually help maintain that identity because there's always something to fix, something to pay off, something to worry about, something to overcome. And that fixing, that paying off, that worrying, that overcoming can actually lock that struggle identity in place. You get to keep being the person who's working hard. But here's the question I really want you to sit with. Who would you be outside of the struggle, outside of the struggle identity? Who would you be if life weren't a constant problem to solve? If you could work less? If money could come easily? Who would you be if you were just happy? If you felt truly free and alive? What would you do with all of that freed up mental space? And maybe the most uncomfortable question, who would you be if your family was still struggling, but you weren't? Because that leads us to the next hidden payoff. The third hidden payoff of staying in debt is debt can keep you connected to your people. Sometimes getting out of debt isn't just about money, it's about belonging. Maybe you grew up in a family where money was always tight, where you watched your parents struggle. Maybe your friends are struggling. Maybe your colleagues are struggling. Maybe everyone around you is living with some version of financial stress. And there's part of you that may believe if I become financially successful, I will be different from them. And that can feel terrifying because the last thing you want to do is screw up your most important relationships. Human beings are wired for belonging. We want to be part of the group. We do not want to be the person who suddenly thinks they're better than everybody else. We don't want our family to resent us. We don't want our friends to think that we've changed. We don't want other people asking us for money. We don't want to feel guilty because we're doing well while someone we love is still struggling. Sometimes staying financially stuck allows you to say, I'm still one of you. I'm still struggling too. I still get it. I'm not leaving you behind. And if you've ever had the thought, who am I to have all of this when my family doesn't? I want you to know that that thought is much more common than you might think. But here's something I want you to consider. What if your freedom doesn't mean you're abandoning your people? What if you can love your family without recreating their financial circumstances? What if you can have more without feeling like you're taking something away from someone who has less? What if you can be the person who breaks the pattern? Because sometimes we confuse belonging with suffering together, and they're not the same things. Okay, this gets even more interesting when we talk about your relationships, which leads me to the fourth hidden payoff of staying in debt. Debt can protect your relationships because maybe you're not only afraid of leaving your family behind, maybe you're afraid of what will happen in your actual relationships with your partner, with your friends, your colleagues. What happens when you become financially successful? What if your partner's relationship with money is different than yours? What if your friends can no longer afford the things that you can? What if your colleagues start seeing you differently? What if you make significantly more money than the people around you? What if people start expecting more from you? What if they judge you? What if they think you're selfish? What if all of a sudden they think you're too good for them? What if your success changes the dynamic? These are all real fears. And if your nervous system believes financial success threatens that connection, then staying financially small can actually feel safer. And when you choose to stay safe rather than to risk growth, everybody stays right where they are. The bank balances never budge. Everybody understands each other. They know the language of scarcity. Everybody has the same conversations about money. They're always staying in the energy of there's just never enough. Everybody complains about how expensive everything is. And in that place, you don't have to confront the question, what happens to my relationships when I become successful, when I become someone new, when I become someone who's abundant? Because if you're committed to becoming a different version of yourself financially, your relationships likely will change. The question is, will you let them? You may have to learn how to stay connected without staying the same. Or you may have to learn how to let go. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh man, my debt is not just a math problem. Yes, that is exactly why I created my course Back in Black, Eliminating Debt for Good and Creating a Mindset for More Than Enough. If you've tried to get out of debt before and somehow you ended up right back where you started, I made Back in Black for you. Because I don't want to just teach you how to throw every extra dollar at your debt and white knuckle yourself to a zero balance. I want to help you understand what's actually keeping you stuck, the beliefs, the emotional patterns, the money stories, the self-sabotage, and the identity underneath the debt. All of that is living inside of your central nervous system, and it's keeping you small. Inside Back in Black, there are tapping sessions for every lesson to help you start feeling safer with the things that may feel unfamiliar, like having money, looking at your numbers, making new and different choices, letting go of scarcity thinking, and ultimately becoming someone who doesn't need debt in order to feel safe. Because we all know you can pay off a credit card and then go right back into debt. But you can also consciously change your relationship with money from the inside out so that you're no longer recreating that same cycle. So if you're ready to stop managing your debt and actually start changing the pattern underneath it, check out Back in Black. I'll put the link in the description beneath this video. The fifth hidden payoff to staying in debt is that debt can give you an excuse to play small. Debt can be a very legitimate reason not to take a risk. I'd love to start a business, but I have debt. I'd love to quit this job, but I have debt. I'd love to invest in myself, but I have debt. I'd love to travel, to move, to create something, to write my memoir, to raise my prices, but I have debt. And I'm not saying that debt is not a real financial consideration. Of course it is. But sometimes debt can become a really convenient reason to avoid something that is actually much scarier. Being seen, taking responsibility for your own success, taking the leap, finding out what you're actually capable of. Because if you fail while you're in debt, you can say, well, of course, I had debt. But what if you had no debt? What if you had no more excuses? What if you actually had the money, the time, the resources, and now you actually had to go out and do the thing you wanted to do? That can be terrifying because then you have to be the person who takes full responsibility for her life. The sixth hidden payoff to staying in debt is debt can keep you from having to trust yourself. This is a big one. Being debt-free requires a different relationship with yourself. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself to make decisions, to tolerate discomfort, to delay gratification, to recover quickly when something goes wrong, to solve problems without immediately reaching for a credit card, to say no, to say yes, to handle having more money, to handle not having money, to create money, to keep money, to make decisions without constantly asking, can I afford this? Because there's a difference between I can't do this because I have debt and I'm choosing not to do this. I'm choosing not to buy this because it doesn't align with what I want, with what my values are. The second one requires self-trust. And sometimes we stay in financial struggle because we haven't yet developed that sense of self-trust. Debt keeps the decision external. I can't. Freedom requires the decision to be internal. I choose. Those are very different identities. The seventh hidden payoff of staying in debt is debt can be a form of self-punishment. Now we're getting into some deeper territory. Debt is sometimes connected to shame. Maybe you've made some financial mistakes. Maybe you've overspent. Maybe you made some decisions that looking back, you wouldn't make again today. Maybe you feel like you should have known better. And somewhere inside you decided, I need to keep myself on the hook for this. I need to pay for this. Literally, I need to suffer for my mistakes. I need to make this right. I don't deserve to move on yet. And so you keep yourself in the financial consequences, in financial prison. But here's the thing, punishing yourself doesn't make you more responsible. It doesn't undo the past, and it doesn't help you create a healthier relationship with money. Sometimes what actually needs to happen is forgiveness. Not just saying, oh, everything was fine, my choices didn't matter, but rather giving yourself some grace and allowing yourself to say to yourself, I'm allowed to learn from this without making myself suffer forever. I am human and that's okay. It's okay if I make mistakes because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes money mistakes. Getting out of debt can mean so much more than paying off a balance. It can mean finally saying to yourself, I don't need to keep punishing myself and I deserve the freedom I desire. The eighth hidden payoff to staying in debt is debt can help you preserve your goodness. This one is subtle. I really want you to think about this one because every dollar that you put towards your debt gets you one step closer to becoming a rich person and having more money at your fingertips. You pay off the debt, you build savings, you invest, you accumulate, you become wealthier. And if you have a negative association with wealthy people or rich people, that can create internal conflict. Because maybe somewhere along the way, you learned rich people are greedy, rich people are selfish, rich people don't care about other people. Rich people have more because somebody else has less. Rich people are entitled, rich people are bad. So if you become a rich person, if you allow yourself to become a rich person, what does that make you? If you've associated wealth with badness, then becoming wealthy threatens your identity as a good person. And here's the sneaky part. You can unconsciously stay financially stuck in order to prove your goodness. You can keep yourself in struggle mode because struggling proves I'm not greedy. I'm not selfish. I'm not one of them. I'm still a good person. Look at me working so hard for the money. But what if you could have money and be generous? What if you could have money and be ethical? What if you could have money and care deeply about other people? What if you could have money and use it to create more good in the world? What if having more money doesn't determine your character? What if money is just a resource? Because money doesn't make you good and money doesn't make you bad. You get to decide what you do with it and who you become with more of it. Let's move into number 9, what I think is the deepest hidden payoff to staying in debt: worthiness. Sometimes staying in debt allows you to avoid the very confronting question, do I actually feel worthy of a rich life? Not just a life where the debt is gone, a rich life, a life with extra cash, a life where your bills are paid, where you have savings, where you can travel, where you can rest, where you can buy beautiful things without immediately feeling guilty, a life where you can be truly happy and fulfilled, a life where you're not constantly worrying about money anymore. Because maybe there's a voice inside of you saying, who am I to have that? Who am I to have a rich life? Who am I to have extra money in the bank when people I love are struggling, when people in the world are struggling? Who am I to be debt free when my parents didn't get the chance to be or didn't have the tools to be? Who am I to be comfortable? Who am I to be happy? Who am I to have more than enough? Here's what I want you to know. You don't have to earn your right to have a good, comfortable, rich life by suffering first. You don't have to stay in struggle mode to prove you're a good person. You don't have to stay financially small to make other people comfortable. You don't have to carry your family's financial story forever just because you love them. There are so many other ways to love them. And you don't have to keep punishing yourself for choices that you made before you knew what you now know. You are worthy of a rich life right now today. So if you're working on getting out of debt and you're frustrated because you keep making progress and then somehow find yourself back in the same place where you started, I want you to stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what is this debt doing for me? What does it allow me to avoid? What does it allow me to believe? What does it allow me to remain? What does it allow me to belong to? What would change if I didn't have it? Would my relationships change? Would my identity change? Would my work change? Would I have to receive differently? Would I have to trust myself differently? Would I have to let go of struggle mode? Would I have to forgive myself? Would I have to be comfortable with having more? And ultimately, who would I be if I were a debt-free person? Because that's the real work. You're not just becoming someone who's paid off their credit cards. You're becoming someone who feels safe with freedom, someone who feels safe with money, someone who feels safe having more than enough, someone who no longer needs to struggle to prove their worth, someone who can be wealthy and still be good, someone who can thrive while their family is still figuring some things out, someone who can change without abandoning the ones that they love, someone who can have a rich life without apologizing for it. And if that version of you feels a little exciting, but also a little scary, good. That is where the work is. And if you're ready to actually do that work, not just pay off the debt, but become the person who can stay out of debt, Back in Black is there for you. All the information is in the description below. You don't need to shame yourself into becoming a debt-free person. You need to start making it safe for your nervous system to become that person. And that's a very different way of thinking about getting out of debt, because you're not just paying off a balance, you're becoming someone new. So maybe the question isn't how quickly can I pay off my debt, but the question is how safe can I become with the freedom I am creating? How safe can I become with the freedom I am creating? Because when the debt is gone, who are you going to be? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please do give it a like, subscribe for more so you don't miss any more videos in the Debt-Free Summer Series, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one.